Yeah, the like training to failure 3 times a week on squat and bench press just absolutely was not feasible, and I would not recommend that.
If I increase the volume and it's working against me, as you guys so aptly put it, if you can get through the program, complete it, and maintain all the other variables, that's how the inverted U occurs.
That is something I'm mindful of with communicating this dose response specifically because I've had personal experiences where, in hindsight, I shouldn't have tried that training approach because I paid the price for it, and it not only it not only negatively impacted me in the short term in terms of being able to sustain a training program, but also kind of lingered for a while. And I think we've seen other anecdotes of that as well. And you also mentioned like specific research experience. This is another reason why it makes me a little bit hesitant, right? Zach, you can probably talk to this better than I can because for your master's thesis, we did a study in the squat and the bench press comparing. It was 4 to 6 RP versus 7 to 9 RP versus training to failure.
And all the way to failure.
Yeah, so there were effectively 4 conditions. And the reason there were 4 conditions is because originally there were going to be 3 conditions. And one of those conditions was every single set to failure.
Yep.
But we quickly learned that was not feasible, right? And it wasn't that high of volumes. If I recall correctly, it was 3 or 4 sets 3 times per week for each squat and bench press with a little bit of accessories, but not all that much. And yeah, the like training to failure 3 times a week on squat and bench press just absolutely was not feasible, and I would not recommend that. And I think it's to your point, Eric, those are likely the things that are going to limit folks in terms of determining the volume cap. At least that's kind of how I've shifted recently, is instead of saying Zach's optimal bicep volume is 12 sets a week and mine is 6 sets a week and Eric's yours is 22. It's less about that, and it's probably going to be more so working backwards from what's realistic based on some of those logistical constraints. And again, I've just seen the negative consequences of trying to push too hard effectively, right? And I think once you've been training for 5-10 years, you become more level-headed, and you probably look at this data, as we all are, with what I would think a pretty balanced view and therefore a balanced practical application. But again, I'm very hesitant with these things, and I'm almost trying to overemphasize the limitations, especially at the upper end of the dose response relationship, because I don't want to further some of those. I don't want to increase the number of those negative events happening for folks. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, no, I generally agree. I think it's tough because I think at the end of the day, we communicate science because we want people to gain practical utility from it. So it's always that balance of heeding caution, but also being directive. And this is just the game you play with science communication. That's always just so hard. And the striking the balance of it is heeding caution, but not being so hand wavy and nuanced that people can't actually get the directive that you're actually trying to provide them with. But no, I generally agree with the way that Eric kind of put it too, in terms of at the end of the day, like the primary thing I view particularly these really big projects is just providing us from a practical perspective the directionality of these effects so that you can use that as kind of your mental framework for troubleshooting on the individual level that has so many different considerations that you're not going to face in these studies due to a variety of different factors. One that we've hammered on the high volume stuff is like the slight selection bias kind of thing that can occur in terms of only including people who can actually sustain the studies, right? So there's just so many different things that influence it actually on the ground. But I think, those framework principles that I think that we can derive from these kind of things are really helpful from that end. So yeah, I agree.
I just want to provide maybe one helpful perspective shift I've had based upon your guys' data as a lifter for the listener, so they can kind of see, maybe how should I take this or what's really changed. Previously I was pretty convinced, and I still am, that there is an inverted U relationship. Didn't know where it was, but that there was actually kind of this effect of you're outpacing your ability to recover from training to the point where you're slowing down the actual rate of adaptation, so that I could go from doing 15 sets to 25 and my rate of growth would actually be slower. And I think now, and that it would almost be like this insidious thing I wouldn't know. Like I could be getting better gains at 15 sets, but I'm getting gains at 25 sets and I'm working really hard. So how do I know that the grass isn't greener actually on the other side of the fence I just hopped over? I got to go backwards, right? Now I'm much more of the opinion that, if you can get through the program, complete it, and maintain all the other variables, that, the volume isn't detracting from your RIR, the volume isn't detracting from your form, the volume isn't detracting from your ability to sleep or adhere to the program, that's how the inverted U occurs, is that the side effects of trying to do the volume. So now, instead of it being this insidious thing I'm afraid of, I feel like, okay, if I increase the volume and it's working against me, as you guys so aptly put it, I'll be acutely aware of that.
Yep.
Like I am getting hurt. I cannot do this. I am limping around at night. My elbow tendonitis is preventing me from holding the bar on RDLs, all those types of things. Like, I think just knowing that you will be aware of the issue, that it's not going to be something that sneaks up on you, that you're not like this secret victim of high volume, negative effects, I think is quite comforting.
Yeah, it's
and
empowering.
It should give, exactly, it's empowering. It should give athletes and coaches the knowledge of, all right, hey, look, we can try this out. And if you're able to recover, but if your performance all of a sudden gets like really variable, your sleep gets messed up, you're getting tendonitis, you're feeling senses of burnout, you're dreading your workouts. And when you send me the videos, you think you're at RPE 10, but it actually looks like you're an RPE 8 to me. All right, this is probably not worth it. Our increase in quantity is actually degrading quality more than I think it'll benefit us, or that we're potentially on the way to something causing a larger issue than any potential benefit we're getting. And that's, I think, a really important mentality shift that I am personally, like seeing as a bodybuilder.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think what you just said explains how our data can explain multiple different anecdotes. So the knee-jerk reaction for someone that kind of is in a quote-unquote low-volume camp is that, how is this possible? I've tried high volumes. It hasn't worked well for me. I've seen great results training with 5 sets per muscle group per week. I think that is very much still compatible with our data for the reasons you mentioned, right? Again, the average participant in the included studies is probably, I think it was like 25 years old. So that's slightly above college age, but nonetheless, most of the participants were probably college age, probably have a little bit less on their plate than maybe the average person looking to apply these findings. And like you said, Eric, I've been really enjoying that perspective on research studies, is that, hey, you have 12 weeks to get as much muscle growth as possible, go. Right? That's a much different question than, hey, you have a 10, 20, 30 plus year training career, make as much progress as possible. And hey, there's a lot of other benefits that come from lifting beyond just strength and hypertrophy, go. Those are totally different. Those are totally different questions. And I think hopefully podcasts like this, again, allow us to kind of separate, hey, this is our best estimate with the tools we have, with the data we have of the physiological dose-response relationship. That is quite a different question, or that is quite a different question of what do I do long-term in practice.